They say Kyoto never truly sleeps. When the rain falls over Gion's narrow streets, you can still hear the echo of footsteps that don't belong to the living. And see, just for a moment, the shimmer of a red umbrella turning the corner. This is not a tale of vengeance. It's a story of a promise made under the rain, and the soul who waited 100 years for it to be kept. Chapter 1. The Rain in Gion. The rain began to fall just as Akira stepped out of Gion's Shiyo station. The first drops were thin, thread-like, soft as a breath on the back of his neck. Then, within moments, the drizzle turned into a heavy downpour, a white curtain that swallowed the narrow streets of old Kyoto whole. He pulled up his collar, covering his head as he hurried across the slick stone path. Lanterns swung on both sides of the alley, trembling in the wind. Their red glow shimmered on the rain-soaked ground like pools of blood. From far away came the faint sound of shamisen strings and laughter from geisha houses, but the sounds were warped, echoing strangely through the rain. Gion, normally alive with chatter and footsteps, was now a place of water and silence. Only Akira's footsteps filled the night. He was on his way back to his student lodging near Higashiyama after his part-time shift at a tea house. The trains had stopped because of the storm, so he decided to walk through Gion, though people often whispered that when it rains, spirits lose their way. At the intersection leading to Hanamikoji, Akira saw a figure under the streetlight. A woman in a white kimono. Her hair was long and black, falling straight down her back. In her hand, she held a red umbrella. The red was vivid, too vivid. It glowed even through the veil of rain, like fresh blood spilled on cold stone. She stood motionless, her back turned to him. Akira froze. Something in him stirred, a strange pull of recognition and fear. He took a hesitant step forward. "Sumimasen, are you okay?" he called out. No answer. She didn't move. Then, slowly, the red umbrella tilted slightly, as if beckoning him closer. He stepped toward her, cautiously. Each footstep splashed against the wet stone, tap, tap, tap. But then he noticed something that made his breath catch. The woman left no footprints. When he was only a few meters away, she turned around. Under the trembling red light, her face appeared, pale, smooth, featureless. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just skin, white and still as porcelain. The red umbrella tilted again, half covering the faceless visage. A sudden chill swept through Akira's body, forcing him to step back. And in that instant, she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Only the red umbrella lying on the ground, rain dripping from its edge, each drop falling in steady rhythm, plop, 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 blending into the gutter water. He bent down, trembling, and picked it up. It was heavier than it should have been, its fabric cold and soaked through. Inside, faint black ink marks were smeared across the silk. He squinted to read them. It looked like a name. Greater than Sayuri? A flash of lightning lit up the sky above Yasaka Shrine. For a brief second, the whole street glowed white. And at the end of the alley, Akira saw her again. The woman in the white kimono. This time, she was holding another red umbrella, not the one in his hands. She stood still, her back toward him once more. Akira dropped the umbrella and ran, splashing through the puddles. The rain grew louder, mixed with a new sound, the soft slap of bare feet following him. He turned around, no one was there. But on the glistening stones behind him, a trail of wet footprints ran parallel to his own, and stopped right outside his door. Inside his room, Akira's clothes were soaked through, but oddly, no water dripped from him onto the floor. Outside, the rain continued, relentless. He tried to calm himself, reached for his phone, and opened his gallery. The last picture he had taken appeared on the screen. The girl in the white kimono was looking straight into the camera. And in her hand, the red umbrella was dripping blood. Chapter 2. The Cursed Photograph. That night, Akira couldn't sleep. The rain outside refused to stop. Each drop struck the window with a rhythm, tock, 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 like someone gently knocking. He pulled the blanket over his head, trying to ignore it, trying to forget the image of the red umbrella dripping blood on his phone screen. But the photograph seemed to change every time he looked at it. The first time, the woman in the white kimono was standing in the rain, her head bowed. When he looked again, her head tilted slightly, and dark shadows had begun to form where her eyes should be, like something beneath her skin was slowly opening. The next morning, Akira brought his phone to Naomi, a classmate from the media department who often helped the photography club. "It's probably just a camera glitch," she said, zooming in, "but something's off. Look at the reflection in the puddle." Akira leaned closer. In the reflection of the puddle, his own image was missing. Only the woman stood there, smiling faintly, a gentle smile that somehow made his heart freeze. "Maybe it's just the light," Akira whispered, forcing a laugh. Naomi frowned. "Where did you take this?" "At the corner of Hanamakoji Street, under the red lamp." Naomi hesitated. "Do you know what happened there?" That afternoon, they returned to Gion to check. It was raining again, not a heavy downpour, but a quiet, endless drizzle that made Kyoto feel half asleep. The narrow streets were empty. The Norin curtains of the teahouses swayed like ghosts in the mist. Akira pointed at the lamppost. "Right here." She was standing here. Naomi raised her camera and snapped a shot. The flash burst across the rain. For a split second, Akira thought he saw someone pass behind him. He turned, no one was there. But on the wet stone behind them, a line of bare footprints stretched toward the lamppost and vanished halfway. Naomi's voice trembled. "Maybe someone just walked by?" Akira shook his head. "No one else is here." That night, back at his apartment, Akira received a message from Naomi. "Greater than, Naomi, Akira. The photo we took, there's something wrong with it. Naomi, you're in it. But behind you, there's someone holding a red umbrella. Naomi, I swear, no one was there when I took it." Akira opened the file. Behind him stood a woman in a white kimono, holding a red umbrella. Water dripped down its edges like strands of blood. And when he zoomed in, he saw her arm wrapped around his shoulder, as if she were standing right behind him the entire time. The phone slipped from his hand. Outside, the rain suddenly stopped, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, from somewhere inside the room, a whisper rose, soft, close, almost tender. "Greater than, you took a beautiful picture. Akira." He turned on the light. No one. But in the darkest corner of the room, a trail of water glistened, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. His phone screen flickered to life again on the floor. A new photo had appeared, one he hadn't taken. It showed the woman sitting on his bed, holding the red umbrella, staring directly into the camera. Chapter 3: The Endless Rain. 3 days had passed since that night. And still, it rained. It wasn't an ordinary storm. The sky above Kyoto seemed trapped in a never-ending cycle of drizzle and mist. A gray shroud that swallowed the city whole. The sound of rain had become part of Akira's breathing, part of his blood. He could no longer tell when it was morning or night. The window glass was constantly fogged over. The raindrops crawled down in strange, deliberate lines, forming shapes that looked almost like fingers tracing the glass. He had wiped it clean dozens of times, but every time he turned away, the same patterns returned. The first night, he heard dripping in the bathroom. The second, the dripping moved closer, right beside his bed. On the third night, he opened his eyes and saw a puddle forming beneath his bed, faintly glowing red like lantern light. He crouched down, heart pounding. Under the bed sat the red umbrella, open upside down, water dripping steadily from its ribs. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop echoed unnaturally, as if it were falling through the floor, into something deep below. Panicking, Akira dragged the umbrella into the hallway, leaving it propped against the wall. He mopped the floor clean, but when he woke the next morning, the puddle was there again, and the umbrella was back under his bed. Soaked through. Cold. Sleep abandoned him. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard a whisper just beneath the rain. Greater than, "You promised. You wouldn't leave me in the rain." The voice was soft, but it slithered through his thoughts like water through cracks. He played music, turned on the TV, anything to drown it out. But the whisper seeped into every sound, as if it existed on a frequency only he could hear. That evening, Naomi came to check on him. She stepped inside, only to stop mid-stride. "Akira, did you leave the faucet on?" "No. Why?" "I can hear water dripping." They searched everywhere, the sink, the pipes, the walls. But there was no leak, no puddle, no source of the sound. Yet the dripping continued, echoing from the floor, the walls, the ceiling, as if the room itself were breathing water. Naomi's voice trembled. "You can't stay here. Something's wrong." Akira nodded weakly. He reached for his coat. And Naomi suddenly screamed. "Greater than, Akira, behind you." He spun around. Condensation clouded the window pane. And on the fogged glass, a pale handprint pressed from the outside. 5 slender fingers, nails long and faintly blue. Each fingertip dripped with water that slid down the glass in slow rivulets. At the center of the palm was a circular mark. A perfect red ring. The imprint of a small umbrella. They fled down the stairwell, breathless. Outside, the streets were empty. And though rain poured heavily, it seemed to fall only on the building they just left. Beyond it, Kyoto was dry, bathed in moonlight. Naomi stared up at the strange cloud hovering above. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Greater than, the rain, it's following you." That night, Akira stayed at a friend's place near Yasaka Shrine. But even there, as soon as he lay down, the sound began again. Not dripping this time. Footsteps. Soft, wet, dragging footsteps moving slowly across the floor. Slap, step, slap, step. He held his breath. Then he saw her. The woman in the white kimono, standing by the window, holding the red umbrella. It was raining outside, but she stood inside the room. And yet the rain still fell from her umbrella. Each drop hitting the floor and spreading outward, forming a dark circle beneath her feet. "Greater than, you promised," she whispered, voice trembling like the rain. "You said you wouldn't forget me." Her words melted into a haunting lullaby that filled the dark. When Akira finally found the strength to move, she was gone, leaving behind the red umbrella, open beside his bed, its ribs dripping the last of the rain. Chapter 4. The story from the old tea house. The next morning, the rain softened into a thin mist. Not a storm, but a ceaseless drizzle, cold and silver, like threads of memory. Gion was quieter than usual. Only a few people hurried along the slick alleys, their umbrellas trembling under the gray sky. Akira and Naomi stopped before an old tea house, hidden deep within Shirakawa Alley. Its sign, barely legible on a weathered plank, read, "Greater than, Ochaya Sayuri, established in the 15th year of the Meiji era." Naomi whispered, "Sayuri?" It was the same name written inside the red umbrella. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and fading incense. A single paper lantern flickered above the counter. An elderly woman in a gray kimono was seated behind the teapot, pouring matcha into small cups. When they entered, she looked up, her eyes calm, slow, and old enough to remember 100 winters. "It's been a long time since young people have come here," she said, her voice like wind brushing paper. "You're not from around here, are you?" Naomi nodded and told her everything. The red umbrella, the photo, the rain that would not end. The old woman listened silently. Then she rose, opened a small cabinet, and brought out a black wooden box. Inside lay a piece of decayed red silk, and a faded photograph. It showed a young woman in a white kimono, her head slightly bowed, holding a red umbrella. Beneath it, faint characters read, "Greater than, Sayuri, Gion, 1902. The woman began to speak, slowly, like reciting a prayer. Greater than, in the old days, there was a geisha named Sayuri. Beautiful as cherry blossoms in March. Gentle but solitary. She loved a young samurai, a nobleman's son. He promised to take her away, but left for Tokyo and never returned. Greater than, Sayuri waited for him for 3 years. Every day, she went to the Shirakawa bridge with her red umbrella. Standing there through the rain, watching the river flow. Greater than, one stormy night, she walked into the water and never came back. Since then, when Kyoto rains, people see a woman in a white kimono, walking silently under a red umbrella. Those who see her never live to see the next sunrise. Naomi shivered. You mean, she's a spirit? The old woman nodded. Greater than, a yurei bound by an unkept promise. Her longing was so deep it turned into a curse. People call it aim no noroi, the curse of rain. Akira's voice cracked. But why me? Why is she following me? The woman stared into his eyes for a long time before whispering. Greater than, tell me, young man, have you ever promised someone you'd return? Her words struck him like thunder. A flash of something surfaced in his mind. A dream, perhaps. A woman standing in the rain, turning away, whispering, don't make me wait too long. When they left the tea house, the rain grew heavier. Naomi turned back once. Through the misty glass window, the old woman was still seated, motionless. And behind her, Naomi swore she saw a portrait of a young man hanging on the wall. He looked exactly like Akira. That night, back in his room, Akira stared again at Sayuri's photograph. Where the paper had once been faded, the writing now bled darker. The ink somehow restored by the damp air. Greater than, I've waited for you, under this rain. For 123 years. Then came the sound, the sudden, harsh hammering of rain against the window. He looked up. Outside, in the flooded alley, stood the woman in the white kimono. Red umbrella open, staring up at his window. She smiled. And for the first time, Akira heard her voice clearly, drifting through the rain. Greater than, you've finally come back. Chapter 5. The Lover's Curse. The rain still clung to Kyoto. Mist veiled the narrow streets, crimson lanterns flickered like dying hearts. This was no longer ordinary weather, it was as if the rain itself were breathing. Watching, waiting. Akira couldn't escape the whispers in his dreams. Every night, he heard her voice, faint, trembling. Greater than, you promised you'd come back, under the red umbrella. He began to believe that Sayuri wasn't just haunting him. She was calling him back to something unfinished. Naomi came to him with a discovery. She had been researching the archives at Kyoto City Library. There's an old record, she said, from 1902, a house in the Higashiyama district. It belonged to a geisha named Sayuri. After her death, everyone who lived there drowned in their rooms, even though there was no water. Her voice shook as she continued. Maybe that's where it all started. Akira felt a chill run through him. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. Something inside him knew that place. He had dreamed of it before, the faint smell of incense, the sound of dripping water, and a woman's silhouette standing behind a shoji screen. That evening, they went to the address together. The old house crouched behind a moss-covered gate, hidden in a narrow alley near Kodaiji Temple. The wooden sign was faded. The name, Jai Baihei, Sayuri, barely visible under layers of rot. Inside, the air was thick and cold, tasting of damp earth and age-old incense. Akira's flashlight swept across peeling scrolls and dust-choked tatami mats. Then it landed on a dressing table, its mirror cracked but intact. On it sat a small wooden box. Inside was a folded letter, written in ink so dark it looked like dried blood. He unfolded it carefully. The handwriting trembled, every stroke heavy with sorrow. Greater than, I waited for you 3 years. Through every rain. You promised you'd return. But the rain never stopped, and neither did my heart. When the water rose above my lips, I smiled. Because I knew, only in death could I keep my promise. Below, written in something darker than ink, was one final line. Greater than, if I remember in the next life, I will find you. Naomi gripped Akira's arm. She thinks you're him, the samurai who left her. Akira didn't answer. Each word in that letter pulsed in his chest like his own memory. A heaviness pressed down on him. The same sadness he couldn't name, as if he'd betrayed someone long ago and forgotten how. The rain outside stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the hallway, came the sound of slow, wet footsteps. Slap, slap, slap. Naomi froze. Someone's here, she whispered. The light flickered. At the end of the corridor, a pale shape appeared. A woman in a white kimono, holding a red umbrella, each step leaving a puddle that spread across the wooden floor. Greater than, you finally came home, she said softly. Naomi screamed, pulling Akira toward the door. But it wouldn't open. Water began to leak through the cracks in the walls, trickling down in thick, red streaks. The floorboards swelled and groaned. From the ceiling, drops of blood-colored rain began to fall. Akira, hurry, Naomi cried. He turned back. Sayuri was standing only a few feet away now, the air rippling around her. Her umbrella cast a red glow across her face. She reached out a trembling hand, her voice breaking. Greater than, I've waited 100 years of rain. And suddenly, Akira saw it. A flash of memory that wasn't his, yet felt like it was. A man in black armor. A woman in white, kneeling beneath a storm. He held her close, then drove a blade through both their hearts. Blood mixing with the rain, the red umbrella falling between them. Akira gasped, stumbling back. Sayuri's form wavered, flickering like candlelight in the wind. Her voice echoed through the collapsing house. Greater than, when the rain stops, I will take you with me. The storm outside roared to life again. Naomi dragged Akira out as the floor gave way behind them. They ran until they fell into the flooded street, gasping for breath. When they looked back, the old house was collapsing in on itself. And floating amid the debris was a single red umbrella, open and spinning slowly on the surface of the rising water. Chapter 6. The Song in the Rain. 3 nights had passed since Sayuri's house collapsed. Yet the rain had not stopped. Not only Gion, all of Kyoto seemed drowned under the same shroud of gray water. The streets shimmered like veins of mercury. The old shrines dissolved into mist. And even the sound of the bells from Yasaka Temple felt muffled, as though heard from beneath a river. News broadcasts spoke of an unusual weather front. But Akira knew better. This was not the rain of the sky. It was the rain of a soul that refused to sleep. That night, half asleep, Akira heard a song. It was soft, distant, sung by a woman's voice carried through the sound of rain. He could not understand the words, but the melody crept into his chest and made him ache with sadness. Then the words became clear, ancient, fragile, like a lullaby whispered across centuries. Greater than, aim wa furu. Kimi wa karanai. The rain falls, and you never came back. The voice came closer. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It came from within the walls, the floor, the dripping ceiling. Everywhere. Naomi grew desperate. She called a Shinto priest, an old man named Kubo, who arrived with prayer beads and 3 white candles. As soon as he entered the room, his eyes fixed on the corner where the red umbrella leaned against the wall. He went pale. Greater than, this is no ordinary object, he said quietly. Her spirit lives within it. He placed the 3 candles around the umbrella in a triangle, began to chant an ancient purification prayer. But midway through the ritual, the middle candle flickered and died. A gust of freezing wind blew through the room, though every window was closed. Greater than, no, Kubo muttered, voice trembling. She has created Suyu no Kekai, the rain barrier. A prison of water and memory. He explained that long ago. Certain geisha who died for love would bind their spirits with blood and rain, creating a kekai, or barrier, so their souls would never dissolve into nothingness. Greater than, unless the promise is fulfilled, he warned. The rain will never stop, and she will drag the one she loves back into the rain with her. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Then what can we do? The old priest turned to Akira. Greater than, when she sings, do not answer. If you sing with her, the barrier will open, and your soul will no longer belong to this world. That night, Akira sat awake, the priest's warning echoing in his head. Outside, the rain whispered endlessly. Then, faintly at first, the song returned. Greater than, aim wa furu. Kimi wa karanai. He pressed his palms against his ears. But the voice was inside his mind now. Gentle and unbearably sad. Footsteps followed. Soft taps of wooden sandals on the wet floor. Tack, tack, tack. The door slid open without a sound. Rain poured in from the darkness outside, soaking the tatami. Sayuri stepped through the doorway. Her white kimono clung to her skin, dripping. The red umbrella rested lightly in her hand, its fabric glistening, though no light touched it. She walked toward him, and as she did, it began to rain inside the room. The candles flickered violently, casting trembling light over her face. Eyes black and deep, mouth curved into a soft, fragile smile. She sat beside him on the futon, her cold fingers brushing his cheek. Greater than, do you remember? She whispered. That night, under the bridge at Shirakawa? You said, if I waited, you would return in the rain. Akira's chest tightened. A flood of half-formed memories surged through him. A man in black robes. A bridge. The smell of rain and blood. He knew then. It wasn't just a dream. Sayuri smiled faintly, her eyes wet with tears. Greater than, now you have returned. Sing with me, and we'll never be apart again. She began to sing once more. Her voice was hypnotic, a melody of sorrow and love intertwined. Akira's lips trembled, he almost echoed the first line. But just then, Naomi burst into the room, light flooding from the hallway. Don't sing, Akira, she cried, hurling a handful of white salt across the floor. A thunderclap shattered the silence. Sayuri's figure flickered, then vanished with a hiss, leaving behind the open red umbrella, lying in the center of a black puddle that reflected Sayuri's smiling face. Standing just behind him. Chapter 7. The apparition at Yasaka Shrine. The morning after that storm, Kyoto lay beneath a sky the color of ash. The rain had thinned to mist, but the air remained thick, heavy with a moisture that seemed to breathe. Naomi insisted they go to Yasaka Shrine, where the old priest Kubo had once trained in the ancient arts of cleansing. The shrine stood silent atop its hill, veiled in smoke from wet incense. Bamboo chimes tinkled weakly in the damp air, and rivulets of water ran down the mossy stone steps. Every step Akira took felt weighted, as though something unseen was following right behind him. When he turned to look, there was nothing. Only the faint reflection of two sets of footprints in the puddles. Inside the shrine's inner hall, a man awaited them. He was old, hair silver, eyes as clear and steady as still water. The successor of Kubo, he was now the shrine's chief guardian, known simply as Kubo-sama. He motioned for them to sit. In front of him was a bronze mirror, dark and ancient, encircled by a ring of salt. 3 paper talismans lay soaked upon the altar, their ink running as if recently touched by rain. You bring with you the scent of water, Kubo said quietly, eyes on Akira. Not the scent of the sky, but of a woman who died waiting. Naomi told him everything. The umbrella, the photograph, the haunting, the song. When she finished, Kubo nodded slowly. Greater than, Sayuri, he murmured. Yes, I know that name. Her spirit was never properly enshrined. He lifted the bronze mirror. The surface shimmered, cloudy at first, then cleared. Akira leaned forward. In the reflection, behind his own face, stood a woman in white, her expression unreadable. The red umbrella hovered above her shoulder like a bleeding moon. Naomi gasped. Akira turned, but there was no one there. Only the reflection remained. And within it, the woman's lips moved, silently. Kubo began to chant, tracing sacred symbols across the mirror with a ritual dagger. The air trembled, the candles shuddered in their holders. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, though the rain had stopped. Greater than, she is not merely a ghost, Kubo said. She is bound within Tsuyu no Kekai, the rain barrier. A bond of memory, blood, and promise. Greater than, when two souls are tied through unkept vows. They return to one another, again and again. One must die for the other to rest. Akira's hands tightened on his knees. So, if I don't go to her? Then the rain will never stop, Kubo replied. Or worse, she will not stop until she has pulled you back into her storm. Naomi whispered, voice breaking. Greater than, why him? Why Akira? Kubo met her gaze. Greater than, because his soul was once hers. Lightning cracked across the sky. And the shrine doors burst open. Wind howled through the hall, carrying the smell of wet earth and blood. The mirror shivered violently. A pale hand pressed outward from inside its surface, its fingers curling around the bronze rim. Naomi screamed. Kubo shouted a prayer and slashed through the reflection with his dagger. The mirror shattered. Rain exploded from the shards, drenching the altar. Through the veil of water, Akira glimpsed another world. A Kyoto bathed in red light. A woman in white standing on the Shirakawa Bridge, holding a red umbrella. And then, a voice, soft and aching. Greater than, you left me in the rain, but I still waited. The vision vanished. Kubo collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. The candles went out one by one. Akira fell back, gasping, clutching his chest, his heart pounding with a rhythm that wasn't his own. Naomi ran to him. Akira, are you all right? He looked up, dazed. His eyes gleamed faintly red. And when he spoke, his voice wasn't entirely his. Greater than, she's inside me, he said softly. She's been waiting, for me to remember. Outside, the shrine bells tolled 3 times. Then fell silent. A single droplet of rain landed on the altar, followed by another, and another. When they looked outside, the sky was clear, but rain was falling only on the shrine.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 8. The Eyes in the Mirror. After the night at Yasaka Shrine, Akira was no longer the same. The rain didn't stop, not outside, not inside him. It pulsed quietly behind his ribs. A second heartbeat, a steady whisper that said, greater than, I remember you. Days blurred together. When Naomi spoke to him, sometimes he would pause before answering, as if listening to another voice only he could hear. At times, when she called his name, he turned to her with eyes that weren't his. Soft, dark, and endless, the eyes of Sayuri. One night, Naomi heard water running. She followed the sound to the bathroom. The light was dim, steam fogged the mirror. Akira stood there, shirtless, motionless, staring at his own reflection. Akira? She called softly. No response. Then, the reflection turned its head toward her, while Akira's body remained perfectly still. Naomi froze. The face in the mirror wasn't his. It was Sayuri's. Her hair hung wet across her shoulders, her lips red, her eyes calm and sad. As Naomi screamed, the mirror cracked, splintering across the glass like veins. Dozens of fragments scattered across the floor. And in each shard, Sayuri's face smiled faintly, her lips moving soundlessly, repeating a single phrase. Greater than, it's all right now. I'm here. Later, Akira claimed he remembered nothing. Only that he had been dreaming. A dream of standing under a bridge in the rain, watching a woman vanish into the river. The water was warm, He whispered, like it was alive. Naomi noticed that when he spoke, his breath left a thin mist in the air, though the room wasn't cold. And sometimes, when he looked at her, she could swear his pupils shimmered faintly red, like drops of blood. Desperate, she searched Kubo's old notes, hoping to find a way to break the rain barrier. Among the papers, she found a sealed envelope. The old priest had written one last warning before his death. Greater than, if Sayuri's spirit merges with the vessel, she will no longer seek revenge. She will seek rebirth. Greater than, the only key to separation lies beneath the Shirakawa Bridge. There rests the mirror of binding, buried where she died. But to touch it is to invite the same fate. By the time Naomi looked up from the letter, Akira was gone. In his room, the floor was soaked. Words were scrawled across the wall in watery streaks. Letters running down like tears. Greater than, I see her now. I see what she sees. On the table, a single mirror shard stood upright, balanced perfectly on its edge. In its reflection, Akira's face smiled back, but Sayuri's eyes stared through him. Night fell. Naomi followed the sound of rain to the Shirakawa Bridge. The streets were deserted. Water ran black under the stone arches. And standing in the middle of the bridge was Akira, barefoot, soaked. The red umbrella open above his head. Rain fell everywhere but not on him. It seemed to avoid his body, bending away as if afraid to touch him. Akira, Naomi shouted. He didn't answer. When he turned toward her, his face was calm, too calm. And in his eyes, she saw Sayuri looking out. Greater than, Naomi, he said softly, she's inside me. And I don't know where I end, and she begins. Lightning flashed. For an instant, Naomi saw two figures standing where Akira had been. Akira and Sayuri, overlapping perfectly, their outlines flickering between life and memory. Then the rain turned cold. Sayuri's voice echoed through the storm, a lullaby half sung, half sobbed. Greater than, aim wa furu. Kimi wa karanai. Naomi stepped forward. But the closer she came, the more the air thickened, until the world itself seemed to blur, like a reflection on water about to break. Chapter 9. The Secret in the Diary. After the night at Shirakawa Bridge, Akira vanished. No one saw him leave. But by dawn, a strange phenomenon spread through Kyoto. The rain no longer covered the entire city. Instead, it fell only on a single path, stretching from Yasaka's shrine to the banks of the Shirakawa River. Everywhere else, the sky was bright and blue. But over that narrow strip of land, clouds swirled endlessly like a wound that refused to heal. Naomi knew where he had gone. She could still hear the faint echo of Sayuri's song in her mind. A voice between sadness and love, calling her name like wind through wet silk. She searched desperately for answers, returning to the one place the priest Kubo had mentioned before his death. Kodaiji Temple, where spirits without graves were once memorialized. The temple stood in silence, hidden among damp bamboo groves. Rainwater trickled down the roof tiles, dripping like tears. At the back of the temple grounds, Naomi found an old storage hall, locked, sealed with a rope dyed red. She hesitated, then cut the rope. Inside, the air was cold and still. In the center of the room sat a wooden chest, its surface engraved with words in fading ink. Greater than, Ana wa kyoku o shibaru. The rain binds memory. Naomi opened it carefully. Inside lay a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed and water-stained. Yet the ink remained clear, as if untouched by time. She flipped open the first page. And there, written in an elegant hand, was a single name. Greater than Sayuri. She began to read. Greater than, the first night of rain. I wait for him. Greater than, the 100th night. My heart still beats, but he does not come. I sing beneath the bridge so he will hear me, though the river answers in his place. Greater than the 300th night. I cut my palm and wrote his name inside the umbrella. They say rain is heaven's tears. But I know it is only mine. Naomi's hands shook. Each line felt like it bled from the paper itself. She turned to the final entries. And the handwriting grew jagged, desperate. Greater than the day he will not return. I made my choice. I mixed my blood with rainwater. Whispered his name one last time. And built a wall of water between this world and the next. Greater than Suyu no Kekai. The rain barrier. Greater than so long as it rains, I will live. So long as he forgets, I will not rest. Greater than when he remembers, the rain will stop. Dash dash dash. Tears filled Naomi's eyes. This wasn't hatred. It was grief frozen in time, a love turned into a storm. But then she noticed something strange. At the bottom of the last page, the ink had bled into a darker shade. A thick, almost metallic red. When she touched it, the page pulsed beneath her fingers. And then, she heard footsteps. Slow, echoing, moving through the corridor outside. She turned. The door slid open by itself. And a woman in white stood in the doorway. Her kimono soaked though there was no rain. Her long hair clung to her face. And the air grew cold enough to freeze Naomi's breath. Sayuri. Dash dash dash. Sayuri stepped forward, voice low, trembling like rain on glass. Greater than, you've read it, haven't you? Naomi backed away, clutching the diary. Sayuri, he didn't betray you. You were born in another time. He couldn't remember. Sayuri raised her hand. Greater than, there is no other time. Only the promise. Naomi's heart pounded. Then why keep waiting? Don't you see? He loves you, even now. Sayuri's expression faltered. Her gaze softened, a flicker of pain passing through her face. For a moment, the rain outside stilled. But then the temple trembled. Water poured in through the cracks in the floor. The diary in Naomi's hands burned hot, and the letters began to bleed red again, spreading across the page like living veins. Greater than, aim wa furu. Kimi wa karanai. Sayuri's voice rose above the storm. Her tears mingled with the water rising around them. Naomi shouted through the downpour. Greater than, if you truly loved him, let him go. Dash dash dash. Sayuri stopped. Her eyes met Naomi's, deep, endless, breaking. Then she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Greater than, love doesn't end when rain stops. With that, her form began to dissolve, melting into mist and water. The diary slipped from Naomi's hands, falling open on its last page, where one final word appeared in blood-red ink. Greater than, Gion, the end. Chapter 10. The Bloody Rain at Kiyomizu. By dawn, Kyoto was drowning. Rain fell harder than ever, but its color had changed. It was no longer clear. It was red. The streets glistened as if painted with blood. The temples, the bridges, the lanterns, everything shimmered crimson under a sky that looked ready to burst. People locked their doors, whispering prayers, afraid to even look outside. Only one woman dared to walk through the storm, Naomi. She followed the pull of the rain up the winding slope toward Kiyomizu-dera Temple, the place where the rain barrier had been born, and where it would end. Dash dash dash. The road was deserted. Water rushed down the stone path like a river, carrying fallen petals and the faint scent of incense. All along the way, hundreds of red umbrellas stood planted upright in the ground, their handles buried, their fabric trembling in the wind. They swayed together, whispering in unison like the murmur of the dead. Naomi's shoes slipped on the slick moss. By the time she reached the temple gate, she was drenched, her heart hammering against her ribs. And there, at the center of the courtyard, stood Akira. He was motionless, staring into the storm, a red umbrella open above him. Rain cascaded around him but never touched his body. The air shimmered faintly, as if he stood inside a different world. Beside him, Sayuri appeared, white kimono glowing faintly through the storm. Her eyes filled with sorrow deeper than the rain. Dash dash dash. Greater than, you forgot me. Sayuri whispered. But I never forgot you. Akira looked up, voice soft but clear through the roar of the storm. Greater than, I didn't forget. I just didn't know it was you. Greater than, it doesn't matter, she said, stepping closer. The promise is what matters. You said, if I waited, you would come back. Now you're here. Now, we'll never part again. Naomi tried to run to him, but the ground split open with a sharp crack. A surge of red water burst upward, forming a circle around the temple. Sayuri lifted her hand, and the sky itself began to bleed. Dash dash dash. Thunder tore across the heavens. From the rivers, rooftops, and shrines, women in white kimonos began to emerge. Geisha with empty eyes, each holding a red umbrella dripping scarlet. They gathered around Sayuri, their movements slow, graceful, endless. Naomi screamed over the storm. Greater than, Sayuri, stop, you'll destroy everything. Sayuri's gaze didn't waver. Greater than, if Kyoto forgets my love, then let Kyoto drown in it. The rain thickened until it fell like sheets of blood. The entire city below Kiyomizu turned red, the rooftops glowing faintly in the downpour. Naomi fell to her knees, clutching the prayer charm Kubo had given her, the last one. Dash dash dash. She hurled it toward Akira, shouting, greater than, end it. Remember her, and end it. The charm burst into white light, tearing a hole in the rain. Akira's body shook. Memories flooded back, centuries collapsing into a single heartbeat. He saw himself dressed in black armor, standing on the Shirakawa bridge under a storm. Sayuri knelt before him, soaked, trembling, her red umbrella open like a wound between them. Greater than, if I wait, she had said, will you come back? I will. He'd lied, before walking away. He had never returned. Now, as thunder split the sky, Akira turned to her, his voice breaking. Greater than, Sayuri, I'm sorry, I kept you waiting too long. Dash dash dash. For a moment, the rain paused midair. Sayuri froze. Her eyes widened, not with anger, but with release. She smiled, a soft, trembling smile that seemed to dissolve her sorrow. Greater than, you remember. I remember, he whispered, and I'm sorry. Sayuri stepped closer. She reached out, touching his chest where his heart beat. Greater than, then, we can finally stop. Lightning struck the temple's roof, shattering the air. The storm folded inward. The red umbrellas burst into fragments of light, rising like fireflies toward the sky. Sayuri's form began to fade. Greater than, you've come back to me, she said. That's enough. Dash dash dash. She leaned forward and kissed him once. A kiss as light as rain. The rain turned white. The wind ceased. And in a blinding flash of silence, Kiyomizu Dera was washed clean. When the storm cleared, only Naomi remained, kneeling in the courtyard. The sky above Kyoto was pure blue. The ground was dry. At her feet lay a single red umbrella. Its color faded to pale rose. Its ribs broken. Its surface streaked with the last trace of blood. Chapter 11. Meeting Sayuri again. The red rain stopped. Kyoto awoke to silence. For the first time in weeks, sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across rooftops still slick with water. People opened their shutters to find the city glimmering, clean, bright, and eerily calm. They said it was a miracle. No one knew that a curse had just been broken. Only Naomi did. Dash dash dash. She wandered up the hill toward Kiyomizu Dera. The temple was half destroyed, tiles scattered, wood soaked through. But the air was peaceful, almost sacred. The last drops of rain still clung to the moss, shining like tiny mirrors. Naomi laid a single white flower on the stone courtyard where she had last seen Akira and Sayuri. As she rose, something cold brushed her wrist. A drop of water, though there were no clouds. She looked up. The sky was empty. But when she looked down again, the puddle at her feet rippled. And in its reflection, two figures stood behind her. A man and a woman beneath a red umbrella. Akira. Sayuri. Dash dash dash. Sayuri's hair floated in the reflection like black silk. Her face was calm, her eyes no longer hollow but full of light. Akira stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Greater than, Naomi, he said softly, thank you for setting us free. Her throat tightened. You're alive? He smiled faintly. Greater than, not alive, but no longer lost. Sayuri spoke then, her voice as delicate as falling rain. Greater than, we were never meant to linger. But because of you, Kyoto can finally sleep again. Dash dash dash. Naomi fell to her knees, tears mixing with the water beneath her palms. Will I see you again? She asked. Sayuri's reflection smiled, that same smile of quiet sorrow. Greater than, when the rain returns. We'll visit. Not as ghosts, but as a memory. A breeze swept through the courtyard, rippling the puddle's surface. When it stilled again, they were gone. Only the faint outline of a red umbrella shimmered on the water. Dash dash dash. That evening, Naomi returned to Gion. She passed the lanterns, the narrow alleys, the smell of tea and rain-soaked cedar. The city felt lighter, as if it had forgotten its own grief. But near Shirakawa Bridge, she stopped. A single red umbrella leaned against the railing. Its fabric dry, its handle tied with a thin white string. Naomi reached out and touched it. The wood was warm to the touch, alive. A whisper brushed her ear. Greater than, arigato, Naomi. Dash dash dash. She smiled through her tears. The wind picked up again, and the umbrella slipped from her fingers, rolling slowly toward the river. It caught the moonlight for just a moment, then drifted downstream, turning gently, until it vanished into the dark. And above, in the clear Kyoto sky, for just one heartbeat, a faint red glow shimmered among the stars. Chapter 12. The Blood Oath. 10 days after the Rain of Promise, Kyoto was quiet again. The sky stayed clear, the river calm. Even the air smelled lighter, no longer damp with sorrow. But Naomi could not rest. Sometimes, at night, she still heard the faint patter of rain. Though no drops fell. It was inside her head, soft, steady, endless. She would wake to find her sheets damp, her hands cold, and on her wrist, a faint red mark that hadn't been there before. A tiny pattern shaped like the ribs of an umbrella. Dash dash dash. On the 11th night, Naomi returned to Shirakawa Bridge. She carried white incense sticks and a strip of silk torn from the red umbrella that had drifted away. She wanted to give them to the river, a final offering for Sayuri and Akira. But as she struck the match, a wind rose, blowing the flame out backward. The incense fell into the water, and the river began to glow faintly red, forming a perfect circle around her reflection. Then, on the surface of the water, words appeared, written in what looked like blood. Greater than, the oath is not complete. Dash dash dash. Naomi froze. All around her, the night grew still. Then, from the empty sky, raindrops began to fall upward. They rose from the surface of the river, floating into the air, catching the moonlight like reversed tears. The reflection in the water shimmered. In place of her own face, Naomi saw Sayuri's. Serene, pale, her lips barely moving. Greater than, one must hold the promise. Sayuri whispered. The rain cannot be without its keeper. Naomi's wrist began to burn. The red mark pulsed like a heartbeat. Her blood throbbed, heavy, slow. She fell to her knees, clutching her arm. And from somewhere deep inside, a voice not her own murmured. Greater than, a new vessel has been chosen. Dash dash dash. Panicked, Naomi ran to Kodaiji Temple, seeking help from Rin, the young priest who had taken Kubo's place. The temple was dark except for a single lantern flickering in the prayer hall. Rin listened quietly as she spoke, then retrieved a scroll bound with red thread. He untied it and read aloud. Greater than, when one soul leaves the rain barrier, another must be bound to keep balance. The curse never dies, it only changes hands. Naomi trembled. You mean, it's me? Rin nodded gravely. Greater than, the mark is the proof. The rain recognizes you now. Naomi's voice cracked. There must be a way to break it. Rin's expression darkened. Greater than, there is only one way. You must perform the blood oath. Return to Kiyomizu. Mix your living blood with Sayuri's spirit. And speak her name beneath the rain. Either the barrier will shatter, or you will take her place. That night, the wind turned cold. The moon vanished behind clouds. Naomi prepared the ritual knife, the salt, the talisman. She walked alone up the silent path toward Kiyomizu Temple. Her reflection followed her in every puddle. But it wasn't hers anymore. Sayuri's eyes watched her from the water. Calm and patient. At the top of the hill, Naomi drew the blade across her palm. Blood dripped onto the stones. And with it, the first drop of rain fell from the sky. She raised her bleeding hand, whispering, "Greater than, if this is the only way to free you, then take what's left of me." The rain thickened instantly. It hit the ground like heartbeats. A hand, pale, cold, rose from the puddle and gripped her wrist. Sayuri's face formed from the rippling water. Beautiful and terrible. Greater than, are you ready? Naomi nodded, tears mixing with the blood on her skin. Greater than, yes, if this ends the rain. Sayuri smiled sadly, placed her palm against Naomi's heart, and whispered, "Greater than, then let it rain again." Lightning split the sky. The world filled with red light. And as the storm began anew, the two women's voices blended into one, singing through the downpour. A song older than memory. Greater than, Aim wa Furu. Kimi wa Karanai. Chapter 13. The last night in Higashiyama. The storm returned that night. From the hills above Kyoto, the city glowed beneath waves of rain that shimmered like liquid glass. Thunder rolled over the tiled roofs, and the air smelled of iron, earth, and prayer. Naomi walked alone through Higashiyama, the district where Sayuri had once lived. Every lantern flickered red, every puddle reflected faces that weren't there. She could feel the pulse of the rain barrier inside her chest, steady, ancient, alive. With each heartbeat, the mark on her wrist brightened, tracing the ribs of a red umbrella that now seemed carved beneath her skin. Sayuri's whisper followed her through every gust of wind. Greater than, just a little longer, until the rain remembers us both. At midnight, Naomi reached the ruins of Kiyomizu Dera. The courtyard still bore the scars of lightning. The air still held the faint smell of blood and incense. She laid her palm against the wet stones. The ground answered with a tremor. A single drop of crimson fell from the sky and splashed against her hand, warm, heavy, almost human. Then the voice came again, clearer now, from somewhere inside her own ribs. Greater than, Naomi, don't fight it. You are what remains of me. Her reflection in the puddle smiled back, but it wasn't her smile. She stumbled backward. Behind her, the shadows along the temple walls began to move, stretching into silhouettes of geisha carrying red umbrellas that dripped endlessly. They formed a circle around her, their faces blank, eyes like pools of ink. Naomi lifted her head. The rain fell harder, but her body stayed dry. She realized she was now standing at the very center of the barrier, the heart of Sayuri's promise. In the roar of the storm she heard two voices merging into one. Hers, and Sayuri's. Greater than, we waited. We loved. We became the rain. The ground split open. A flood of red water surged upward, reflecting flashes of every memory that had ever belonged to them both, the bridge, the kiss, the betrayal, the vow. Naomi saw Akira's face, peaceful at last, vanishing into the light beyond the downpour. Sayuri, she whispered, let them go, let Kyoto live. Sayuri's presence wavered. Her reply trembled through the wind. Greater than, if I release it all, will I disappear? Naomi closed her eyes, tears mingling with the rain. Greater than, then disappear with me. The thunder broke like a heartbeat. Naomi drove the ritual blade into the stone at her feet. The mark on her wrist burst open in crimson light. A column of water rose around her, spinning faster and faster until it swallowed her whole. From within the storm, two shapes could be seen, one in white, one in red, holding each other. Then the light imploded, collapsing inward like the end of a dream. When it cleared, the rain stopped. The night fell silent. Only the wind moved, carrying a faint scent of matcha and old perfume down the streets of Higashiyama. At dawn, the monks of Kiyomizu found the courtyard washed clean. In the center lay a single red umbrella, closed neatly beside a white lotus blossom. No trace of blood. No trace of Naomi. They said Kyoto finally slept in peace that morning, but when the first drizzle touched the temple roof, the drops fell in rhythm, forming a quiet melody. Greater than Aim wa Furu. Kimi wa Karanai. Chapter 14. The Last Red Umbrella. Morning came without thunder. Mist drifted low between the temple roofs, and sunlight broke over Kyoto in pale gold. For the first time in generations, there was no rain. Only a faint scent of wet earth, and a hush so complete it felt sacred. On the terrace of Kiyomizu-dera, the wind stirred what remained of the offering Naomi had left. One lotus petal, one folded talisman, and a single red umbrella lying closed beside them. The monks said they saw a shimmer in the air that morning, a brief flicker. Like water catching fire. Two silhouettes appeared within the light, a woman in white, a man beside her. They were smiling. Then both figures dissolved into mist, leaving behind a trail of rain that never touched the ground. Kyoto was free. But it would never forget. Down in Gion, the shopkeepers hung their lanterns again. Tourists returned. Children ran across the bridges without umbrellas, laughing at the sky. Yet, sometimes, when clouds gathered above Shirakawa, people said they heard a faint melody threading through the wind. Greater than Aim wa Furu. Kimi wa Karanai. No one was afraid anymore. They called it the Rain of Memory. Naomi was never found. But each year, on October 26 at 7:30 p.m., a gentle shower falls over Kyoto for exactly 7 minutes and 30 seconds. The drops are clear as glass until the final minute, when they shimmer faintly red in the lantern light, and then fade away. Old men bow their heads. Women leave cups of matcha by their doors. And travelers who do not know the story look up, smiling, wondering why this brief, beautiful rain feels like a farewell. On the hill above Gion, an old tea house still keeps its window open to the evening. Inside, a red umbrella hangs on the wall, never opened. When the wind passes through, it turns slightly, as if someone unseen had just stepped inside to escape the rain. And somewhere in that whisper of wind, a voice answers, soft, grateful, eternal. Greater than Arigato. Chapter 15. After the rain. Years passed. Kyoto changed, as cities do. New lights rose along the narrow streets of Gion. The scent of roasted tea replaced the old smell of candle wax and ink. Only the river stayed the same, whispering under the bridges as it had for centuries. People no longer feared the rain. They welcomed it. When clouds gathered over the hills, shopkeepers smiled and said, "Greater than Sayuri is visiting again." Naomi's name was remembered differently by everyone. Some said she had been a scholar who vanished during the Great Storm. Others claimed she became a guardian spirit who protected Kyoto from floods. In truth, no one knew. But there was a small tea house near Higashiyama, tucked behind the stone steps of Kodaiji Temple. Its sign read simply, Aim no Yakusoku, the promise of rain. Inside, the shelves were lined with weathered books and a single framed photograph. A young man and a woman beneath a red umbrella, smiling faintly as if caught between worlds. On certain evenings, when the air grew heavy and the sky darkened to violet, the owner, a quiet woman with kind eyes, would pour tea for travelers. If they stayed long enough, they might hear faint music outside. a tune too soft to be played by hands. The woman would lift her gaze toward the window and say, almost to herself, greater than, they're walking by again. The rain remembers them. Then she would smile, the way one smiles at something both sad and beloved. Every year, on October 26th at 7:30 p.m., Kyoto receives its 7-minute rain. No thunder. No wind. Just a gentle fall of water glowing red for a heartbeat before turning clear. Tourists stop to take photographs. Locals close their umbrellas and let the drops touch their faces. In the reflection of the puddles, two faint figures can sometimes be seen crossing the bridge. A woman in white, a man beside her, walking slowly under a red umbrella that never grows wet. When the last drop falls, the city breathes again. The rooftops glisten. The air smells of cedar and old incense. Somewhere far off, a temple bell rings, echoing through the hills. And in that echo, if one listens carefully, there is a whisper, no louder than rain on silk. Greater than, love doesn't end when the rain stops. The storm has ended, but the memory lingers. Kyoto stands silent beneath a sky washed clean. And when the first drop falls each autumn, the people still look up, smiling, afraid, remembering. Because somewhere in the whisper of rain, two souls still walk beneath a red umbrella. Together at last.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.